Okay, then let's begin. Hello and welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Francisco Pitaluga, and I'll be your moderator on this event. I'm a member of Marca Sur, an IP specialized media from Latin America. And today, Joana de Matos Siqueira will be joining me. How are you, Joana?
Good. How are you, Francisco?
I'm fine, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you so much, Francisco.
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about Joana. She is a partner at Brazilian law firm Montauri, Pimenta, Machado, and Vieira de Melo. She is part of the firm's trademark team and chair of its diversity and inclusion committee. Besides that, Joana is very active in pro bono work and social responsibility issues. She is a member of the Women's Intellectual Property Lawyers Association. She has been nominated among the most influential women in IP by international publications, and she participates in various IP women events. Today, Joana will be sharing her own experiences with our panelists. So please feel free, Joana, go ahead.
Thank you, Francisco, and thank you, Marcasur, for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be moderating along with Francisco this panel covering this subject, diversity and inclusion, which indeed is one of my passions. So thank you, Marcasur, for that opportunity. Thank you to our panelists for being here with us today. And going through this webinar, I would like to share with you that it will be a little different from other webinars, amazing webinars that we've been seeing discussing diversity and inclusion. But our goal here is we won't be talking about theory. We want to listen our panelists. We have amazing people here that they are part of diverse groups. So we'll be covering race, gender, sexual orientation, and Laura will also talk with us about disabilities. So it's going to be covering real life experiences. Our panelists will share barriers and obstacles that they did face throughout their life and career. And they're all here, like amazing, successful professionals. So we'll be lucky enough to listen to what they have to share. And I really think that by the end of this webinar, it's going to generate a very positive effect in IP community. And I hope that we are going to be able to open the eyes to IP people and everyone who will be listening to the webinar today, the importance of this subject, not only for our society, but let's focus in the law field. It's our goal here today. And before giving the words to this amazing group, I just wanted to share that the idea that the panel will work is that each of them will have about 10 to 15 minutes to share their experiences. And later in the last part of the event, we'll be addressing comments and questions. So meanwhile they're talking, you just feel free to, you have there in the Zoom meeting, you have the question and answers, and you just can shoot questions and comments, and we are going to make sure to have all them addresses in the end of the webinar. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Joana, and it's time to start. So I will introduce our first two speakers, Brian Winterfeld and Emily Murray. Brian is the founder and principal of Winterfeld IP Group. His practice focuses on the management of global trademark portfolios, while also includes pro bono support for diversity-related organizations. Brian devotes substantial time to diversity initiatives, such as organizing the annual IP Law Institute at the LGBT Bar's Lavender Law Conference, and speaking at symposia to the Institute for Inclusion in the Legal Profession. Brian has served as co-vice chair of the board of directors for the Trevor Project, a large charity in the United States, which provides suicide prevention to LGBT+ young. He has also received the President's Award from the United Cerebral Palsy, a national disability advocacy organization. Emily, meanwhile, serves as the Chief Marketing Officer and Director of IP for Winterfeld IP Group. She directs marketing, business development, communications, public relations, and client relation activities for the firm, and business advice to clients in the brand protection, internet, and policy areas. She also provides substantial support to the firm's pro bono program and its diversity and inclusion activities, including charitable activities and diversity-related publications. Brian, Emily, thank you for joining us, and how are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for having us.
It's a pleasure. So, Joanna, go ahead and feel free to talk with them.
Well, hello again, Brian and Emily. Very happy to be here with you again today. Well, I'm going to start with Brian. Brian, what can you tell us about being an LGBTQ plus member in the legal profession, and particularly during your time with large law firms?
Sure, Joanna, that's a great question. Again, I want to thank Mark Bestor, and I want to thank you for having Emily and I here today on behalf of Wonderful IP Group. Really, from the start of my legal career, it never really occurred to me to be anything but out. I know one of the things people talk about with the LGBT plus community is that you don't have to sort of, reveal your identity, and you can keep it a secret. And indeed, some people do try and do that. But I knew I wanted to be fully myself and not hide who I am. I don't actually recall encountering a lot of challenges with this in law school, where I was fortunate to have a really great accepting peer group. I would say one thing about law school was that there weren't a lot of other out people, so it was a very small group. So there really wasn't a community for me to join or be part of. So that does feel a little bit isolating when you sort of feel like you're on your own. But again, I had very good friends who were very supportive. In my first job, I was extremely lucky as well. I worked for Mary Dennison, who many of you might be familiar. She later became the commissioner for trademarks at the United States Patent and Trademark Office. She just finished a 5-year term as commissioner and actually just recently retired from the USPTO in December. But at the time she hired me, she was a partner at a boutique IP firm in Washington, D.C. Mary is someone who is a staunch ally of the community. She has very, very high standards and was an excellent teacher, and was always accepting of me as a person, and embraced me for who I am, including being part of the LGBT community. So I was very, very fortunate. Once I gained some experience working for Mary, I worked for her for a year as a law clerk during my last year of law school. And I worked for her as her associate for a year after I graduated. And that was a fantastic experience. But then I moved on to larger law firms and to big law firms to try and get more experience and to kind of spread my wings a little bit. And the culture was honestly quite a shock after working with Mary and her partners at the boutique IP firm, where I was really embraced. There was definitely a more, what we would say heteronormative sense, or a sense that the default sort of assumption was that everyone was straight. And there were very, very few out LGBTQ plus attorneys, almost none at several of the firms I worked at, and often no LGBTQ plus affinity groups. I tried to counter this by at least joining the firm's diversity committees so that I could connect with other minority attorneys. However, at least earlier in my career, I was told that being LGBTQ plus did not qualify me for membership in the diversity group. And
Why?
the committees were intended for people in other diversity categories.
Okay.
So basically, they thought it was exclusively for people of color. And if you were LGBTQ, you didn't have a place. So you can imagine how I felt. It was very disheartening to sort of know you're not part of the majority, but then also to be affirmatively rejected by the other minority people who said, you can't be in our club either. So there wasn't a clear message that I didn't fit into the kind of the big law structure. I feel like that, was definitely, as a young attorney, was a very difficult situation to be in. I, of course, sort of, picked myself up and kept going and wasn't discouraged. I was able to really take the skills that I learned working with Mary. She taught me at a very young age how to develop clients and how to develop client relationships. So I was able to, despite sort of not necessarily feeling like I fit in, I was able to have a great deal of success and also really I have to say, and I think this is something that's really important, if you don't find the support that you're looking for from your law firm, look at your clients, or frankly, develop clients who are going to embrace and support you. So even though in many of the law firms I was part of, I didn't feel supported as an LGBTQ attorney, I often had clients that embraced me and supported me. And that kind of sustained me, allowed me to be successful, and kind of kept me going. And so I think that's an important lesson for people to learn, is that, obviously it'd be great if we all had a nurturing, environment within the firm that we're in, but, also look to your clients and your connections that you make through your professional organizations to find a network and support as well. I did become very active in a number of volunteer opportunities to really kind of make the most of my career. And again, was able to kind of build a great trademark practice and a great team with a very loyal client base. However, I felt like I remained struggling a little bit to find the recognition and respect within the larger law firms. I did not usually benefit from the referral relationships that other partners seem to enjoy in the firm. Really, like all of my clients were ones that almost exclusively I created on my own. And nobody was sort of handing me, a trademark portfolio, from a retiring partner or from one of their clients in a different, field who needed assistance. There was very little of that sort of cross referral work. And so I really was sort of left to develop things on my own. But fortunately, I am willing to sort of roll up my sleeves and work hard. So I didn't let that sort of be an impediment to me. I also typically felt like in order to promote, to get promoted, so in order to like go from, of counsel to partner, I would have to sort of change law firms. It was very difficult for me often to be promoted within the firm that I was in. I don't think that's exclusive to me or exclusive to me as being LGBT. I would imagine that potentially is a factor in it. But, I'm not the only person that, changes law firms, and oftentimes people are doing that because of, titles or compensation. But it was something that, I felt like was sort of part of my journey. Over time, I did start to see a few more openly LGBTQ attorneys. I guess it's helpful to point out that I've been practicing law for 21 years. So it is quite a big time span. I graduated law school in 1999. And started working for Mary in 1998. So there has been sort of changes, and there are more sort of out attorneys. However, when you kind of look at the statistics, there's still a very small minority. And there's a very small number that actually make it to the partner ranks, particularly equity partner in the United States. So it's still a very underrepresented group. Ultimately, I realized a few years ago that I felt like I would sort of continue to kind of struggle probably in big law, and really felt like I had learned a lot in big law, a lot about who I wanted to be, and a lot of great lessons that were positive. And frankly, I learned a lot about who I didn't want to be and the experiences I didn't want people on my team to have. And so that really led me to opening 3 years ago Winterfeld IP Group. And I'm really proud of what we've put together. Emily's been an integral part of the practice for over 15 years. She's worked with me. She started out actually as my secretary, and has grown into being an essential part of the firm and the practice, and helped kind of shape the vision for the firm. And really from the beginning, we wanted to create an environment where everyone, whether you're LGBTQ or a person of color or a straight white male, you could be successful based on excellence and hard work, and that you would be judged on your merits and not on other factors that are not relevant to your job performance. So we really are proud of kind of creating an environment that we feel is full of diverse people, and really hardworking people who really are focused on servicing our clients. And also at its core for the firm, we really have a huge commitment to diversity inclusion work, to pro bono work that was mentioned in the beginning. We're really proud of our pro bono partnerships, and that's kind of part of the ethos. And we feel like that's really important. We feel an obligation. Much of the firm is made up of diverse people. We feel a commitment to give back, and we've been able to be successful and have great jobs, and we want to be able to make sure that other people have those same opportunities we do, and also that we feel like it really mirrors the value of our clients, which we think is also really important.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Can you talk a little bit about Glinta? Hello.
Sure. So as I mentioned, one of the ways in which I was able to create some of my opportunities, particularly while working in large firms, was to get heavily involved in industry activities. So I can't encourage people enough to get involved in organizations like the International Trademark Association. And I was grateful to my mentor, Mary Dennison, for introducing me to the International Trademark Association very early in my career. I went to my first annual meeting as a first-year associate. That was in 2000. So here we are 20 years later. And INTA has really been a critical part of me enjoying being a trademark attorney and being successful, building a fantastic team and network. That's actually how I know Joanna. And, you know, it's really been great. And when I arrived at INTA, I did kind of seek out other LGBTQ attorneys. There was no formal group, but there was an informal group called Glinta. And Glinta was very informal. It was at most, you know, I have in my notes a couple dozen. I'm not sure that there were a couple dozen people that ever came to the events at the very beginning, but there would be basically, you know, some partners and associates, and we go out to a bar, frankly, and have drinks together. So it's very informal kind of networking, which I really enjoyed, and it was nice to get to meet other LGBTQ attorneys, but I felt like we could do better. And that the LGBTQ community at INTA could be better served if we had something a little bit more formal. And so we decided that, well, I guess, I think I was working closely with David Stone, but we just, from, at the time, I think he was at Howry, we basically said, let's try and do more. Let's try and make this more formal. I had actually noticed that unlike most law firms and most areas of the legal profession, there didn't seem to be a good number of LGBTQ attorneys in the trademark field. So I thought that if we grew Glinta into something larger, it could be more impactful and create kind of a welcoming environment. Mm-hmm. So we took the lead on creating a directory. It was one of the first steps that we did. And we really pulled together all of the members. And this is a great place for referrals. So this is obviously, INTA is a global organization. And so we have the attorneys not just listed in the United States, state by state, but all over the world. And so that's a great opportunity if you want to kind of go within your referral network to go to one of the LGBT firms that are listed in the Glinta directory. This year, we've grown from a few dozen people to over 200 people who are listed in the Glinta directory now. And those are all LGBTQ attorneys. So huge change in 2 decades, which we're really proud of, and it's really great. We've also realized that there could be a bit more organized in terms of events. So we started planning events that could house a good number of guests and send invitations out to members in advance, where we could draw a lot more people than if we just did a few drinks in a lounge or go dancing. For several years, I collaborated with other Glinta members on planning, and ultimately about 6 or 7 years ago, my team and I took over kind of exclusive planning. Around this time, we also decided to start seeking sponsorships from organizations that might wish to share in some of the costs. This would allow us to host bigger and better events, and also to include a charitable component where proceeds raised from the events after covering costs would be contributed to an LGBTQ+ oriented charity. Now the Glinta event at the annual meeting is one of the largest draws at the conference. Our last event in 2019, we had several hundred attendees and literally probably another 100+ trying to get in at the door. We almost needed security. It was so popular, and people were trying to push their way in who didn't have an invitation and but wanted to come to the party. We're really proud of the fact that we opened up beyond just members of the LGBT community to allies. And so we invited corporates and other law firm members of INTA, INTA staff, the INTA board. Etienne comes to almost every event as the CEO of INTA to support. We almost always have the president address us at each of our events, and other board members. Huge corporate turnout. Like almost the entire trademark team comes from many amazing global companies like Google and Facebook and Salesforce and Coca-Cola, and the list really goes actually on and on. The amount of support that we're getting for Glinta is overwhelming. And it's quite a change, you know, when I really think back about my experience when I walked in to the annual meeting in 2000 and was looking for, you know, some kind of connection and support as an LGBT attorney, there wasn't a lot there, you know, and I did eventually find a couple people to have a drink with. But the fact that an LGBTQ attorney who's new can walk into now and be part of an event that has hundreds of people and where the CEO is speaking, the board of directors is there to support, some of the biggest and best companies in the world, their in-house counsel are there to support us and their teams. Fantastic counsel from all over the world are there to support us, like Joanna. We're very grateful, and it's such a change, and it means a lot. And again, my hope is through the work that we do, that we can just make an impact and really, you know, change the experience people have, let people know what a great opportunity it is to be a trademark attorney, and that being LGBTQ is not going to limit your career, and you can be incredibly successful, whether you want to be a law firm partner or whether you want to be in-house counsel, that there aren't barriers to you. You know, you may hit some obstacles along the way, but hopefully you'll have a network and a team and clients that will support and help you get through that and still be successful.
Great, thank you so much, Brian. And now I want to listen a little bit about Emily. And I know that Brian and Emily, you guys have this very close relationship. And Emily mentioned that Brian were her mentor. So I really like to listen that, Emily. And in that sense, I would like if you could share with us like the importance of a mentorship in the firm and many other things that I know that you are doing in the firm in this sense would be lovely. I'll give you the words.
Great. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to Marcus Soar and thank you to Francisco and Joanna for hosting this wonderful event. I also appreciate Brian including me in the event. He is very inclusive of his team in terms of giving us opportunities that might not always be available. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit, but I'm very grateful to be here and to have a chance to share my story. So in terms of mentorship, I think when we all look back at the history of our lives, we can recall certain people as very impactful. Hopefully most of us have been lucky enough to have had a few people in our lives who really stood out in this regard. And those might be teachers going all the way back to when we were, you know, early in our education. They might be college professors or law school professors. They might be supervisors at work, other people in our offices, or even people outside our organizations who were involved in our industry in some way. Unfortunately, many of us have also had the reverse experience where we're dealing with people in leadership roles who had a negative impact, whose treatment of us was dismissive or demoralizing in some way, who left us feeling less confident in ourselves or disempowered in a way that was really discouraging. And this is why those positive role models are so important. I do want to clarify that for this presentation, when we're talking about mentors and mentorship, I mean people who are really impactful in a personal way. So people can be impactful at a distance as well. Many young people might look up to certain celebrities, politicians, CEOs, athletes, any number of people, even people in their profession that they want to go into who are really successful. But those people often are at a distance where there isn't a direct reciprocal relationship. So by a mentor, I really mean a senior person in the industry who provides a great deal of guidance and personal support to a more junior person in a way that is pretty intensive and ongoing, usually over a period of months or even years or even an entire career. And it's that close, ongoing personal connection that makes the mentor and mentee relationship really special. So to illustrate the value of this, now I want to go back to a bit of my personal story, and in particular how I connected with Brian and what having him as a mentor has meant to me over the course of my career. As a young person, I always really excelled in school. I even went to college a couple years earlier. I finished high school at age 15, and normally in the US that's 17 or 18, and college proportionately earlier. But I graduated from college and I didn't really have a clear sense of what I wanted to do with my life. I tried out a few different things. I taught English as a second language in Japan. Then I worked in the publishing industry. Eventually, I was thinking about law school and decided, but it's so expensive, I didn't want to just jump into it without seeing what it was like to work at a law firm. So I took an administrative support job at a law firm. And throughout this course, I did really like a lot of aspects intellectually about the legal environment, but I came to the conclusion that a career as an actual attorney wouldn't be the best fit for me either. And why was this? Well, I just didn't have anyone that I had connected with as a mentor. And when I tried to speak with some of the attorneys I worked with about potentially going to law school and what guidance they could give, more often than not, the responses were really discouraging, like they were trying to steer me in another direction, or they just didn't seem excited about their careers in a way that would inspire me to make that investment. So ultimately, I decided to apply to business school instead with the goal of earning my Master of Business Administration so that I at least would have the educational credentials to move beyond administrative support roles. And at the time that I was accepted to business school, I was working in a law practice related to finance, so not IP. But I hope that my business education might make me more useful in helping with the substance of the work in some way. So I spoke with the senior partner I supported at that time just to see if he might be able to suggest some resources, some things I could study on my own, some things I should look out for in business school that would be helpful. And his response was, and he literally said that I was not smart enough to learn the substance of the practice. So as you might imagine, this was incredibly discouraging, particularly as his assistant, I had been a top performer. I'd never received a hint that there were any concerns about my work or my intelligence or my work ethic or anything along those lines. So, so hearing that, I decided, well, I don't know what to do but explore a job change because I didn't want to work with somebody who questioned my intelligence and my capabilities. But then I learned that there was going to be a young dynamic partner joining the firm shortly. And the office manager at that time at that firm suggested that maybe I could be matched with him and see if I liked that job instead of kind of the more old school partner. And as you have probably guessed by now, that partner, Mr. Brian
Who
Winterfeld.
was that person?
This being young, Emily.
Yes. Surprise, surprise. And although in that job, I was still technically classified as a legal secretary because large firms tend to be very structured in their roles. But one thing I learned very quickly about working with Brian is that he prefers to assign responsibilities based on team members' capabilities and their potential. So not through the strict delineation of titles. And because I did have a strong background in writing and editing, kind of right away, I got assignments that use those skills, like assisting with articles and presentations, and then even client work product. Brian also managed in a very open and transparent way. So that ensured that I learned a great deal about managing legal practices. And it was really refreshing to finally have a boss who cared about my professional development and my unique skills. And also, furthermore, I could really see and experience Brian's passion for the trademark field and for supporting his clients. And these are things I had just not observed in my prior work for other attorneys. So in kind, this really motivated me to work so much harder than I ever had, to further develop the skills that were already quite strong, and even to work on those that needed some development. For example, although I had always been a very strong writer, I did need some work to improve my public speaking and client relation skills in order to be a more impactful part of the practice. And I was highly motivated to improve in those areas because not only did I want to develop my own career, but I wanted to make Brian proud of me. I wanted to show him that the investment he'd made in training and mentoring me was worthwhile, and that would pay off in me becoming a more valuable part of the practice. So I had to kind of pay my dues for a while in those administrative roles, but once I was able to earn my MBA, I was able to get a promotion to a formal practice management role. I've been able to continue to progress in the years since. It was very incremental when we were at the large firms. Brian really advocated for me to have some kind of official management position. I know sometimes that was a tough sell because it just didn't quite fit into the law firm structure, but I do really, really appreciate him advocating for me so that I could have some kind of recognition for my role. Then when he opened Wonderful IP Group, he offered me the chief marketing officer position because so much of what I had done was to support his business development efforts. And I'm so grateful for that. I've learned a tremendous amount in this role and really coming into my own. I'm really not sure where I would be in my career and life without Brian's mentorship. I don't think I would have progressed this far in my career. I'm pretty sure that at this point, I would be doing something completely different, maybe not in the legal industry at all. But let me just circle back to close this out as to why mentorship is so important, specifically to diverse legal professionals. And I think it's because minorities, really including women in many industries and a lot of legal practice areas like finance that I had been working in are like that, we're often marginalized and overlooked. There are more non-diverse mentors available because the representation of women and minorities in senior leadership roles, especially in large law firms, is quite small. And if they're not being mindful about inclusion, mentors may be drawn to mentees who look like them or have similar backgrounds instead of recognizing that there are a greater variety of people who could benefit from that guidance. Ultimately, whether or not a person in a senior leadership role is diverse, seeking out diverse mentees is so important because it ensures a greater pipeline of senior professionals in the future. And then those mentees can mentor other people, and then you'll just increase that diversity at all the ranks. So I would say if you're in a position to be a mentor, you may not be able to change the entire diversity landscape and the attitudes that lead to substantial challenges for diverse people, but you can certainly make an enormous difference in the career and the life of your mentee or your mentees.
Thanks, Emily. Thank you really for all your words. But if you could give also some advice on how all the efforts that you are doing for diversity and inclusion in your firm. And I would appreciate that. Can you, we don't have a lot of time, but it would be nice if you could share that.
Yeah, so in terms of our firm specifically, I think one thing that we really try to do is we make diversity and inclusion not just sort of a top-down dictate from the management. Brian in particular sets the culture, and the rest of us on the management team really carry that out. But we encourage all of our team members to be active in diversity and inclusion efforts. And I think that to extrapolate that a little bit, the way that you would do that is going to depend on the size of your organization. So at Winterfeld IP Group, we are a smaller boutique firm, so we're not necessarily going to have 20 different affinity groups covering every diversity category because the size of our team isn't that big. But we do participate in a number of diversity-related organizations. We encourage team members to join, to participate with us. We encourage people to bring opportunities to us. So if there's an organization they want to participate in, if they want to go to a conference or speak at an event and they bring that to us, we'll always try to find a way to say yes and to support those efforts. Another thing that's really important that we do is all of our pro bono work. As I think we mentioned in Brian's introduction, a lot of our pro bono work really focuses on charitable organizations that support diverse people. So we have, a couple organizations that are prominent in the LGBTQ+ community, but also people with disabilities. We supported women and girls leadership. We've supported, environmental conservation. We've supported just a lot of different causes that really may resonate with people. And we invite all of our team members, and that's attorneys, other management, support staff, to really participate in supporting these pro bono clients, to attending events that we have. Sadly, not too many events in 2020 because of COVID, but when we have them or when we have virtual events, to attend events like this. We're even starting our own diversity speaker series that our first event is next week that actually features a speaker who is African American and has disabilities and is going to be talking about her experiences in the legal industry and then subsequently doing disability advocacy. So we really try to cast a wide net so that we're being incredibly inclusive with our team, and we're trying to promote taking those attitudes to whatever activities they do out in the community. And if they do choose to move on from the team at some point, then we just want them to take that with us, to have that attitude of diversity and inclusion, even if it's not something that they'd really considered before.
Okay. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian and Emily. And by the way, beautiful background, Emily.
Oh, thank you. I wish it were real.
Okay, I wanted to tell everyone that I shared the bios and the emails of our speakers in the chat section for any inquiries you may have. And please go, as Joanna said before, to the Q&A section if you want to leave us any question there. We will read it later. Now we'll go forward with our third panelist, Renata Shaw. Renata is a Brazilian lawyer in the area of intellectual property with extensive experience in the corporate business environment. In the last year, she has deepened her experience in the area of diversity as a partner with Daniel Abogados, working integrally with the areas of human resource, marketing, and legal, as well as working externally with companies and organized civil society. Hi, Renata. How are you doing?
Hello, hi, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for Marcasu and Francisco and Joanna for having me here.
It's a pleasure. Joanna, go ahead.
Oh, always a pleasure. It's not the first time that we've been sharing a screen, right, Renata?
True.
But it's always a pleasure. Well, so Renata will be talking about law and race and the need to build a Black identity, right, Renata?
Yeah. I kind of prepared myself to talk a little bit about my own experience in the Brazilian market, and I was very touched with the previous panelists, particularly when Brian was sharing his experience. And I must say, I'm in favor of fighting all types of oppressions. So we must fight all types of oppressions. We really do. I really believe that. And I've learned that when getting in touch with Brazilian women's Black movement, and they really taught me that we cannot afford letting go of other oppression. You know, how did I say in English? Permission, allowing other oppressions to survive, so to speak, because they all come from the same root, which is kind of having a single model of behavior. And it's a single model for Black people, it's a single model which affects LGBT, it's a single model, you know, it's a single model that affects everyone. So we cannot afford not fight every type of oppression. Anyway, that's something that I wanted to share before starting. So I want to say who I am, where I come from. My name was already said. I'm Renata Shaw, Black lawyer, working in intellectual property in the past 20 years. And it's important that I say that I'm not talking in the name, and I don't want to claim to talk in the name of all Black people of Brazil, or talking of the experience of all Black people of Brazil. All I'm saying is I'm not claiming to be representative of all Black Brazilians. And what I'm saying is I would like to refer to the concept of intersectionality created by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, and which identifies advantages and disadvantages. They are felt by people and owned by a combination of factors. And in my particular case, I want to say that I was the first person in my family to have what might be considered a middle-class upbringing. And this kind of made my life easier. So in comparison, this gave me certain advantages. And in this sense, I can't be considered like a success case or meritocratic case. I'm pretty much the result of the efforts and sacrifices of many generations, many times ago, and particularly the choices and efforts of my parents who sacrifices their lives in favor of my education. So having said that, I come before affirmative action days in Brazil. And my experience back in that days was being of a single person everywhere I went to. At being a middle-class person, I was pretty much alone as a Black person. And in Brazil, we have a very unusual situation. 54% of the population identify themselves as being Black, but the higher you move in the social classes, the less you see Black people in Brazil. And likewise, you cannot find representation of Black people on TV, newspaper, publicity. And this makes very hard for us to have, to achieve, to acquire a good self-esteem. So to me, it was very important, very, very important to come closer to social movements and to other Black people who are writing about Black identity, writing about Black issues, who were already at university, even though they didn't have a middle class background, so they had a very different experience. So they really gave me a reality shock, so to speak. They say like, look, Renata, it's not about you. It's a collective thing. So please wake up. And that was a very, very positive thing. Very positive thing. I quickly realized, once I got in contact with them, I realized that insertion, diversity, whatever name you want to give to it, it's not about me or someone next to me. It's a collective issue. It's a collective thing. And having been in contact with all those people, those very valuable people, helped me to develop a sense of positive identity and also a sense of responsibility, because it's impossible not to have something and not to have a responsibility that I needed to give something back. It's not like, oh, I have something and then, oh my God, oh, I was affected by racism. No, I had something and I had to, it's not an obligation, but I had the feeling that I needed to give something back. So I was in contact with Black women's movement, with the OAB, which is our bar association as well, because they had a good work with democratic issues. Because when I was kind of younger, Brazil was in a not very democratic period. Let's put it that way. So as I was fighting against racism, I was fighting for democracy as well, because it's impossible not fighting against racism and not fighting for democracy. Things, they come together. So that's how I started. And I really didn't, Brian said about having a mentor, and then Emily said about having a mentor and the importance of that. I didn't have a mentor, and I didn't plan getting into the IP world and IP career, and I didn't have a mentor. When I got into the IP world was really, 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 really by accident. I lived in UK for, I don't know, 6 years. My husband is English. Our son was born there. And when our son was born there, I decided to come back to Brazil because I'm the only daughter. And once I did that, I said, well, I have to work in a legal field because that's my profession. There's nothing else I can do. And by accident, I ended up working on IP law firm as an administrative assistant, even though I was already a lawyer. And then I started moving my way up. And I soon realized I was the only Black person there. And there was no one around me as a lawyer, as a paralegal, no one around me. And it was very, very hard to get other people to be hired, other Black people to be hired. And I soon realized that it was not only a question of race. There are other things too. LGBT people, they couldn't be out, and social issues were social class was also an issue. So you had to be from a particular class. You have to behave in a particular manner. Not only have to be a particular class, but you have to go to certain clubs, come from certain schools, talk in a particular manner. So people would sit together and say, oh, it was lovely going to Italy. Oh, but did you go to that particular little town? Oh, that wonderful tiny little town behind blah, blah, blah. And I would go like, oh God, oh God. And me and other people who perhaps didn't have the same economical, situation, we would go like, oh God, oh God. And then they all would talk about Italy and Sicily, and we'd go like, oh yeah. And I mean, I don't care. I'm a good actress. I don't care. They would talk about Sicily, Italy. Oh, I couldn't care less. Talk as much as you want. But as I said, it's easy for me. I couldn't care less. But maybe it's not easy for other people who can take 2 buses, three metros, and not have the money to, whatever. So it's unfair. It's unfair that these points are not raised in a legal firm, in a legal word, in big law firms. It's unfair that people are not aware how much these type of conversations and behaviors, they exclude people. They can exclude people because, okay, maybe I don't care, but other people do. And other people can be put off with this kind of conversations. And some people do it without even thinking about it, but other people do it on purpose. Let's be clear about it. Other people do it on purpose because they want to keep the word exclusive. And soon I realized that there was not a lot I could do about it because, I didn't have the power. I really didn't have the power. So as my life changed and I went to work in a big company, and again, by chance, I came back to work as a diversity and inclusion partner. I then realized I could make a difference. I then realized that things were even worse than I thought. And Joanna and I, we talked a lot about it because there's a research which shows that only 1% of 7 biggest law firms in Brazil, there's only 1% of Black people that are employed as partners and lawyers. Black partners and lawyers. And I mean, there was back in 2019.
Again, Renata, in a country where 54% of our population declare themselves as Black people. So it's just a little comment.
Yeah.
To see how this 1% really is scary.
Yeah, and yesterday, for people who are watching us, yesterday we were kind of talking how we would arrange this conversation, and Joanna was saying like, oh, sometimes people, some Black people, they get angry because they see a lot of white people with diversity and inclusion initiatives, and I was like, I was a bit. Joanne, I'm sorry. I was a bit impatient with you. I was not nice because I was like, yeah, because
I didn't take it back.
Yeah, but I was. I'm a horrible person. People, I'm a horrible person. I know I am. I was patient with Joanna, and Joanna is so nice. She's got her heart in the right place, and I know exactly what it goes on. It's because
I know you.
I know you know. I know. And I know exactly what happens because in Brazil, we've got 54% of Black people. And when you go to a nice restaurant, we see no one, everyone is white. Only recently we can see a little change on soap operas, television, after a lot of work, because people see a little bit of change on TV and they think like, see, that's change. You see, things are changing, but they don't know how much we've worked behind scenes and how much hard work. We went to Congress, we went to talk to politicians, we made a lot of pressure. So there's a lot of work for this little change. And sometimes people who are kind of a more activist, they get a bit fed up and they are a bit, let's say, impatient. That's a good word. Impatient. And when they see initiatives, they want to see Black people on all initiatives. And when they don't, they go like, hey, come on, where are us? Where are us on this? We are talking about Black people. We are deciding on Black people, but where are us? So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's not easy, but it's worth it. It's worth it. That's something that we discuss like every day. It's a challenge. It's not difficult. It's a touchy situation. It's not, we cannot say that, oh, we are going to change everything. No, it's touchy, it's difficult, but it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. If we can change the lives of whoever, like 3 people, 10 people, 60 people, as we did with Incluir Direito, doesn't matter. If you can change the lives of those people, this will have an impact on their families.
Right.
This can benefit a whole community, and this is a change anyway. We can start changing. We cannot afford do nothing. So we can start changing. A small change, a middle change, doesn't matter, but we have to start changing. So I'm very happy that we are here today talking about it. They're here today discussing this subject. I'm very happy that Montauri Pimenta is really kind of, I know it's been hard work, Joana. It's been hard work. It's been hard work. You've been putting hard work to implement changes. I'm very proud of you because you've been, you're doing a lot of effort, and I'm very, very happy to be here today, even though I know you've got a lot of work to do. So thank you all. Thank you for inviting me to be here today. Thank you, Francisco, Emily, Brian. Oh my God, I left someone.
No, we should.
Louder.
No, we
Joanna.
We should be thanking you for like sharing all this experiences with us. And absolutely, I totally agree with you that perhaps we have not done much, but perhaps not doing much in our point of view is a lot of somebody else. So if you can you listen to me well? Because I'm having a little bit of internet problem.
Now we can, Joanna.
But anyway, so you talk about Incluir Direito, and I think it's a good point to issue in this webinar. Is it nice? You can? Okay. So CESA, which is a non-profit Brazilian organization, they came up, we translate that as inclusion in law. And it gives law students, they are all Black students with a scholarship to get the right tools to be competitive in the professional market. So this project has already had 60 students going through this project along with law firms and universities. It has been amazing. If you consider that 60 people is not a huge number if comparing with the Brazilian population. But again, I would say it's something. It's starting. You gave the chance to 60 people change their lives and give their confidence to get into the law market. Because it's very interesting. We've been discussing yesterday about it, and we see that when you talk about racism in Brazil, is not as it happens in Mexico, for instance, and in the US. But in Brazil, a lot of Black students and Black people, they were never given the opportunity to learn. So of course, as a consequence, they are not competitive if you're considering other people who had chance to learn English or to go to nice schools. And anyway, they have like a stronger education background. And so that's why I love this program.
We're having some trouble listening to you now, Joanna.
So much because that's what they're giving. They're giving the chance these people learn, and they are competitive and much more confident when they decide to get inside a law firm, for instance. Now, is it better? Oh, can you listen to me now?
Yes. Now
Removing the video, is it better?
it's,
Hello.
yes.
Is it better with?
Yes, it is.
I might continue without the video. Oh, thank you. Where did I stop? Let's see. Well, so I'm just
Continue, now
finishing.
we hear you well.
Okay, thank you, Francisco. But anyway, so I was talking about the project and how I really love being part of this project. Our firm just recently joined as a sponsor, and we might have the opportunity to be mentors. Talking about mentorship, Emily, we might have this chance because the universities, they have the pedagogical part, and like they'll be teaching the students what they need to learn to be competitive. But then the law firms not only sponsoring, they also give the chance to the mentors. They share their experiences inside a law firm with the students. So it's really a very, very nice project, and encourage the young law students to want to be part of a law firm, because mainly all of them, when they start studying law, they feel like going to the public area of law. They don't want to go to private practice. But let's see if it changes. As I said, it's better start changing slowly, but doing it, they're not doing it at all, right? That's my point of view. And I agree with Renata that sometimes we are there and we have this committee in the firm, as Francisco mentioned in the beginning of the conversation. And but our committee we are formed by only women. We are all white women, so we are not diverse, but we are trying to do our best. So I am from an opinion that let's try to do something instead of doing nothing because you have any obstacle. And as I said in the beginning of this webinar, all of us, we face obstacles. And allied of diversity and inclusion, we have our obstacles too, but we will overcome that, and the goal is to make it better. Okay, so I said I'm always talking as long as you guys. But I'll give the word to Laura now. And I'll try. Since I won't be speaking, I'll get back with my video here.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Renata. We'll move on to our last speaker, Laura Cochada. Laura is a managing partner at the Mexican firm Dumont. She is specialized in intellectual property law, corporate, civil, constitutional, and environmental law. She has more than 30 years of experience in IP and was Deputy Director of Unfair Competition Prevention at the Mexican Institute of Industrial Property. She's the author of several articles and issues related to IP in national newspapers and international magazines. Laura, how are you doing?
I'm Francisco. Thank you very much to Marcasur for the invite. I'm so happy to be in this panel with such great people, that we have this common ground about trying to change the status quo and caring about people. So thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Joanna, go ahead once again.
Well, since I'm the one having the internet issue, when I talk, I'm going to remove the camera. But so, yeah, I think it's better. So Laura will be talking about the need of firms and companies to raise awareness and create safe workplaces for people with any sort of disabilities. And she will also share with us a little bit of her career, being that amazing, successful women attorney that we are all super proud of.
Thank you, Joanna. Well, the personal journey to learn, understand, and work inclusion and diversity is always a very personal one. Something happened at certain stage that moved your mind, your soul, and your heart to really understand that all humans are created equal and should have the same rights and opportunities. In my case, it was choosing to become a lawyer in a men's world. I'm talking about the beginning of the 80s, which at law school you can find most men and very few women. At home, my parents never said that they were against it, but I received little or no support from my father. Bottom line is that it was a man's career. I come from a lineage of strong and extraordinary women that choose to be businesswomen or to have a job in a time that when they should be baking cookies or stitching crosspoint. And they set that example. I am the first woman with a college degree in my family, and college was great. However, one of my professors, while asking him for a job as an intern, told me that he didn't waste his time training women because in a few years they would be hanging the title near a wall, in a wall near the crib, taking care of a couple of children. It was discouraging. It was a man's world. Ideas such as equal pay, equal conditions, opportunities, at least in my country, were just that, ideas. Also, I was harassed in a couple of jobs, and it was easier to quit than to fight it. It really, your reputation was at stake. But don't get me wrong, not everything was bad. I had a couple of bosses that believed in me and were great mentors and took me under their wings. It is very difficult to change status quo if you're not in a position of influence or power. Through my professional career, I have seen the status quo change, and we owe it to many other people that care before us. I had a pretty amount of professors that were women at law school, but none of them work at the forum. They were just teaching. Brilliant woman that sacrifices a career under the motto that you can have it all. So that meant and taught in a way that you were not able to excel as a lawyer and have a family at the same time. And in a way, it was true at that time. When I started working on the law firm, it was very tough because we were not just trying to demonstrate that we belong and that we deserve, but also we were struggling against men that were not used to having us working at law firms, but also watching very competitive women that didn't understand that standing together make us more. At my time, there were not many women helping other women. It was, in a way, a solo flight. So I kept trying to change the status quo, and I was trying to join legal associations and things like that. But when you start working on the gender equality committee or the women's committee, we ended doing charitable work. Don't get me wrong, it is okay, but I was looking to be empowered as a woman and in the process empowering other women. And at least for many years, there was no place in which we could be trained and learn about gender, equality, equal pay, inclusion, diversity, glass ceiling, and so on. So I started educating myself on the subject. And you work hard, it pays off, and you start having a certain influence at work and at the association, in your social circle, and slowly you are trying to change things. I started working in Dumont 22 years ago, and I had the chance to be very vocal and be heard about giving the same opportunities to men, to LGBT people, and so on. It is true that we were a different firm because Dumont was established by Jewish people fleeing from Holocaust. So I found a lot of empathy for issues that were not part of the status quo, as well as an environment of a lot of respect and tolerance. So that was the best petri dish for everything that I wanted to accomplish. On the very beginning, it was about women, then it was about the LGBT plus community. And the more you work, you learn that, and you understand that you have to include other minorities and creating opportunities and changing the environment that will make all the people in the equation thriving through respect, understanding, and tolerance. In complete difference with the situation of Brazil and the things that Renata was telling us, race has never been an issue in the office, even though there is without any doubt racism and classism in my country. But because the way we were established as a law firm, there were people of all corners of the world working there that had different backgrounds, different faiths, different sexual preferences. And that was part of the glue holding this project together. So years passed and we had already been working in having a management that included both men and women in a similar ratio. We had worked for equal pay. we have worked on diversity, having populations of LGBT communities, different races, and we thought that we were doing late. But you know what? Life teaches you otherwise. So by mid-20s, hello, you are listening to me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, something happened to my computer, sorry. So by mid-20s, we have our first experience with disability. One of our patent paralegals was losing her sight due to a very strange disease, and we really didn't know what to do. And it was not only helping her with the bills because she had social security and medical insurance and so on, but we helped her exploring other type of treatments that were not covered in the health policy, insurance policy. And the most important thing is that she wanted to continue working. We reached out asking for help, for counsel to other companies, other law firms, to human resources specialists, and the answer was always the same: help her to obtain her disability pension and send her home. It was really so discouraging that we didn't find any answers. So we tried to act differently. On the first stages, we bought larger computer screens, different filters for the screens. We wanted her to stay, but above all, she wanted to stay, and it was important for her state of mind and for feeling herself useful. And then there's something I forgot to tell you. She was just 40, so for her it was very, very difficult. Then we tried to sit in different gadgets like voice-activated software, and it worked for a while. Finally, she left because creating an environment for people with that type of disability, working on patent, it was very difficult. So we learned from this experience, and don't get me wrong, we didn't have a lot of people with disabilities asking for a job at the office. We did have a lot of people with canes and walkers and so on, but that was easy to comply. But with other type of disabilities, it was really tough to deal with, and we didn't have any other orientation whatsoever. So for me, the shocking thing at this moment is that every single person that we address, every single company that we address for advice, asked the same thing: send her home. So because it wasn't the practical thing to do, and the legal framework didn't help us a lot, but end of story. At that time, in the mid-2000s, people with disabilities were sent home, and it was the end of story. So we didn't do a lot of follow-up, but we enhanced our corporate medical insurance policy, and that was that. So we think that we were doing great until the next case happened. And it was again an employee with a visual disability caused by diabetes, and all these stories started again. But by that time, our law firm have developed in many ways. We were looking for a certification in different areas. For example, we got a certification for having a quality management system, and we were trying to train and learn through certifications. And we were aware of a certification that comes from a Mexican norm that it's called labor equality. And we started the process. I know that every single jurisdiction is different. And I know that by that time, the legal framework regarding disability had evolved in Mexico and included a lot of things that we needed, and we needed to become a better and fairer society. But the first problem that we encountered was the people itself. Nobody at the office knew anything about all these issues, and we wanted to try to get a certification when to uphold certain values. So the first thing that we have to do was train people. So we start giving courses and training at the office in order that we would disappear the general lack of knowledge of how things happen in the world and how you could work in inclusion and diversity. And the goals and main objectives of this process is not only the certification itself, but to acquire best practices in gender equality, on non-discrimination, on equal pay, and avoiding violence at the workplace and so on. And all these practices, we have already achieved them, to say it in a way. But it was a voluntary effort to go to try to do something for people with disabilities and what it's called accessibility. Believe it or not, in our country, every single company that has more than 50 employees is compelled to do what we have done. And many of you have come to visit in Mexico, and there's no one single law firm that complies with those regulations. So with the training and on staff level, and we hired very specialized people that taught us about diversity and inclusion, we have to start another process when we're speaking about disability. It's because when you get aware of all these best practices, you see the world through different eyes. And we teach people that even saying jokes or nicknames were discriminative, and those nicknames can harm a lot, and people were not thinking about it. But the most important thing that I want to say about disability is that our framework was to facilitate disabled people who encounter obstacles physically, mentally, intellectually, or sensorily to interact with the social and the physical environment, preventing that those barriers that are imposed would exclude them from the labor force and the environment. So what do you do in these cases? Well, we started changing the furniture, changing the layout, changing the bathroom facilities to make people to move freely through the office. We support and like people to use any kind of aids like sensorial aids, headphones, special glasses, and so on. And then we start working with our building. We have changed, for example, speaking about language, we have a lot of Braille, it's called Braille signs. And we are still working on that, like in sign language and things like that. But what we did is changing our environment to be accessible, to disappear the barriers for people that do not function as us. So the main goal, as I told you, was not to be certified, but to make people aware of the problems and obstacles that they encounter and to help them to achieve inclusion. As all of those have said, we don't want to change the world, but if we change the world for a few people, I think that we have succeeded. And the only thing that I wanted to tell you with this conversation is we should be aware of all these situations and we should change it. We should change that in law offices, they're allowed service dogs, that they are Braille signs, that the layout of the office is something that take away barriers for all these people. The most important thing that it's caring about our peers, about other human beings. And if we, as I told you, if we change something for someone, we will have succeeded. So that's everything that I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Laura.
Laura.
That was a beautiful last message. And we will now enable questions from the audience. As I said before, you can go to the Q&A section on Zoom and ask there. Or just raise your hand and ask a question through the microphone. I will start with a question for Laura. Laura, when you decided to make all these changes on the workplace, did you find opposition from inside and also from outside of the organization?
No, let me tell you, we have been very empathic at the office because, as I told you, we have had several cases of disabilities that have been acquired. So I think that all the office supported these changes. And from the outside is not something that we publicize, Francisco. It's like we're doing our thing, and if there's someone that wants us to share information, we do it, but it's not something that we publicize. It's something that, because we have been doing all these changes through 20 years, and this is the last one, not a lot of people know, but at the office, it was difficult. The training and so on, it was difficult, but people are very supportive at the office.
Okay, thank you, Laura. We have a question from Clarissa Jagger. She asked, Joanna, why don't you explain a little bit about the diversity and inclusion project developed by our firm? You talked about it earlier, Joanna.
Yeah, I did. Actually, I'll try to, let's see if the internet will help me here. If you guys cannot listen to me, just let me know and I'll remove the camera. I did talk a little bit. We're in the beginning of this project. It's been like a year that we officially had this committee created in the law firm. And from my point of view, I totally agree with Laura and with Renata. And if you can do a little bit, it's already something. As I said before, it's not an ideal committee because we don't have a lot of diverse people in the committee. But if I had to give a tip on that, I know that Emily is way in advance, just further ahead of us in this matter. She's been dealing with
We're having trouble back with you. Joanna, shut off the camera.
For a while. But my tip would be get to know your team. So that's what we are doing right now. We just had an internal survey to the camera. I'll show the camera, it's fine. I just did. So my tip was to get to know your team, because diversity is an inclusion. It's an ocean. It's a lot of things we won't be able to embrace everything. So let's start. Can you listen to me now? Yeah, Francisco, am I doing good? Okay. So what we did the survey to get to know. We'll mainly start from the survey. I cannot reveal a lot of detail. I cannot reveal a lot of the details yet, the research yet, the survey yet. So the results, I mean. But getting to know your team and making sure that this team feels that they are included, I think it's very important, because sometimes we are just thinking about race, gender, which is very important, or sexual orientation, but there are other issues that should be raised as well. And so that's what we did. We are in this point right now in the office. We had the survey, we are studying the survey, and we are starting to look at the situation with different eyes. So like an example, recruiting a new intern. We are going to different databases to get the curriculums, and we're looking for diverse curriculums to get to our office. So little things that we've been doing. But I would say that the survey to get to know who you are before anything is very, very important. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Joanna.
Something else?
From Rafa Gutierrez.
I think there's a.
Go ahead, Rafa.
I have a question for Brian.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Are you ready for me to ask my question?
Are you there?
Rafa, yeah. Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your experiences today. It was really informative, and apologies if you spoke about my question. I had to unfortunately leave my desk a few times. But I was, I work at Uber, and we've been doing a lot lately regarding diversity and inclusion, looking at the legal field in general, but the IP team has been looking specifically in the IP field to see if there are any, if we can understand kind of the demographics across IP practitioners. And in the United States, at least, there's a lot of studies on patent practitioners, because a lot of patent practitioners have technical or hard science backgrounds, areas where there's already issues. They refer to it as a pipeline issue. There's fewer women, fewer minorities in those practice areas, and so there's a lot of studies on patent practitioners, but I don't feel like it's accurate to wrap trademark practitioners in that group, because there's not the pipeline issue that we see on the patent side. So I was wondering if anyone is aware, and it sounds like, Joanna, maybe you're already working on this. I didn't catch how broad the scope of the survey that you're working on is, but if anyone's aware of any diversity studies with respect to trademark practitioners, whether it's global or United States or focused on a different country, I was interested to know if there are any studies that just focus on trademark practitioners in isolation.
Rafa, from my side, the survey that I was mentioning, it is a survey that we conducted inside our law firm. So it was something directed to our people.
Okay.
And in Brazil, I'm not aware of a survey covering trademark attorneys like in entire Brazil, but I can check on that and see. I don't know if Renata is aware of that. Renata?
No, I'm not aware, and I don't think there is a survey about trademark practitioners in Brazil.
Yeah.
So far, we only had one survey, and it only covered 7 of the biggest law firms in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even about trademark only. It was the biggest law firms in Brazil. So we don't have a specific one covering trademark. It would be wonderful if we had, but I agree with you. I agree with you, Rafa. The trademark, we don't have the pipeline. So, in theory, at first, we shouldn't have a problem finding people to select.
Rafa, this is Brian Winterfeld. I'm not aware of a survey either that is conducted specifically towards trademarks. We work very closely with the Institute for Inclusion and Legal Profession, which is based in Chicago. It's run by a woman named Sandra Yamamate. They're a wonderful resource for overall surveys on diversity and inclusion in the legal sector in the United States. They do a state of diversity in the legal sector every 2 years. They do a publication. We've written articles for the past, I think, 3 publications. And there's great statistical information that's included, again, that's broad, not trademark specific. Also a really good organization that would be good for Uber to know about if they don't already is an organization called NAMWF. NAMWF is the National Association of Minority Law Firms and also women-owned. And they do certifications. In order to become NAMWF certified, you have to first get a certification either from the National Gay Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, or be certified as women-owned, or be certified as minority-owned. You also have to have certain Martindale-Hubbell rating, and then you can be considered for NAMWF. So that's a great place to go to if you're sourcing for sort of outside counsel. But I'm happy to do a little bit of looking around, like some of the other panelists are, to see if we can find something that is trademark specific, but we're not aware of it. And I do think it's something valuable. It looks like Laura might have something to add as well.
Cool, Brian. Before you go, can you just repeat the name of the first institute? We are familiar with NAMWF, but there was another one that you named just before that. IILP, the Institute for Inclusion in the Legal Profession. And if you want to reach out to me, Brian at winterfeld.law, I'm happy to connect you with Sandra Yamamate, who is their CEO, who's super smart and talented, and maybe we have a project for her. Awesome, thank you.
Rafa,
yes.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
When you work with law firms and they have diversity and inclusion projects, do you currently send them questionnaires to check how their diversity and inclusion projects are, and how much they are diverse and how much diverse they are?
Yeah, so we're in the process of doing, I'm trying to think of a way to quickly describe it, but looking at all of our outside counsel and our relationships, and we did send them, the American Bar Association actually has a diversity questionnaire, and every law firm that we work with was required to fill that form out. And so we have the demographics across all the law firms for associates, for partners, the number of people moved into partnership for any given year. And we have those numbers going back, I think, about 2 years for most of the law firms, and they are broken down by people of racial minority, sexual orientation, and gender are the three kind of broad categories of diversity that they have. So yeah, we actually have a ton of data. I mean, we're a data company, so we,
And
in everything we do, including D&I.
Would this guide your choice of law firms?
Yes, it does. I don't know the degree to which I can disclose how it is taken into account, but yes, it is diversity and inclusion. The numbers that law firms have, it's 100% relevant to us retaining that law firm.
Thank you.
Rafa, I just want to tell you that just regarding women, there's a huge survey from Chambers and Partners, and it covers all Latin America on how many percentage of people are in certain law field, no? And they have something that it's called the IP effect, because the section of law, the field of law of IP, is the one that it's most represented by women. You can find it at Chambers and Partners, and it was from this year, and it breaks all through the countries of Latin America, but it's only regarding women. And there's a special chapter of what they call the IPE phenomenon or the IPE influence that, for example, almost 50% of the population in law firms throughout Latin America is women, compared to corporate percent that it's 8%, and then you go civil, mercantile, and so on. But you can find that the survey and the results of the survey at Chambers, the Diversity and Inclusion.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Rafa. We have a question from Fabiana Culso. She wants to know which international or national organization of lawyers has carried out more activities or initiatives to support diversity and inclusion in the last year. I don't know who of you wants to answer that.
Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Yes. Which international or national organization of lawyers has carried out more activities or initiatives to support diversity and inclusion in the last year?
International.
I know that a few of the organizations, they do have diversity and inclusion committees, like the Brazilian OAB, which is the Lawyers Association in Brazil. I know that they do it, but actually I don't know examples of measures that are taking to promote diversity and inclusion. In my opinion, like again, talking about Incluir Direito, which is also handled by a law organization. CESA is one, as I said in the beginning of this conversation. It's a non-profit organization created by law firms. They do have this amazing project that I already talked about, and I think it's a very good example. If I had to pick one, I would say that this one would be the one that really had the hands-on and is doing their best to promote diversity and inclusion, at least in the Brazilian society, talking about Black students.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. I have two more questions, one for Brian and one for Renata. Brian, do you think that integration has improved in INTA?
Do I think what? I'm sorry?
Integration has improved in INTA.
Yes, absolutely. I think that it has changed dramatically. When I first started, it was hard to even find other LGBT plus attorneys at INTA. And again, it was just a very small group that would go out informally, for drinks. And now, Glinta is incredibly visible. We have a directory. We have over 200 members. We have visibility with the board and with top level corporates and practitioners. So I think it's a really different landscape for LGBT attorneys who are coming in to the trademark space. They have a place to go, and hopefully they're going to feel included and supported and welcomed at the organization in a way they wouldn't have 20 years ago.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. That was a question from Juana Rosena, who has another question for Renata. Renata, do Black people in Brazil have today more facilities to study?
Well, since 2003, we've been having affirmative action. So Black people, they can go to university with quotas. So in theory, it's a little bit easier for Black people to go to university, but it's still, we have so many social issues and social problems that I couldn't really affirm that it's easier for Black people to go to university. It's more possible. So in the past, you wouldn't find Black people in the best university. It would be virtually impossible. Now we will find them there. But I'm not sure if I can say that it's easier. It's more likely, it's more possible. I'm not sure about the easier way, but it's possible. And data shows that they are there. So you can find Black students in very good universities. So when law firms say that, oh, I cannot find good students, I always try to say, look, but we do have them. You can find them. Maybe you cannot find them with English or with the, English, Spanish, and French, but you can find them at good universities.
Okay, thank you, Renata. It seems like we have no more questions.
I just want to say, they asked about international and national organizations. In Brazil, we have someone called Instituto Etos and another one called CERT. Instituto Etos, they publish a list with all the companies that they have diversity initiatives. So they have I don't know, every 2 years they have a list with the best diversity initiatives. So Instituto Etos, they have it, and they work with all the Brazilian initiatives. Internationally, they've got one at the Bar Association. The Bar Association is very active with diversity and inclusion initiatives at the legal field, but I don't know any other ones. I just know these two ones, this one nationally and the other one internationally.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. Let me check, but we have no more questions, so it's time to end. Joanna, do you want to say something?
No, I just want to thank everyone again, all the ones who are there attending the webinar, and let's shoot that. I think it's better. And of course, thanks Marcasur, thanks our panelists, and it was a pleasure. It's an amazing topic to talk about, and hopefully you have other opportunities.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Joanna, for your work and your contributions today. And obviously a special thanks to Brian, Emily, Renata, and Laura for sharing their experiences in the IP industry with all of us. Thank you for all the attendees. And as Joanna said, hopefully in the future we can make more events like this one. Have a nice day, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.